Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to the next episode of the Hyperwarming Woman Talk Show, where I highlight amazing women who are making a positive impact in the world. And today I'm really excited about this topic, breaking boundaries and breast cancer diagnosis. This is really a subject that is close to my heart, literally as a breast cancer survivor and thriver. And I'm by no means the only one touched by breast cancer. 1 in 8 women are going to be diagnosed with breast cancer today. And the current landscape of breast cancer diagnostics is you know uh, distressing. I think the whole mammogram is old technology, and so I'm really excited to explore what is on the horizon in terms of early detection. This is a little bit more about how much breast cancer is a global health concern. It's the most common cancer in women and the second most deadly cancer in women. And you can see in North America, we particularly have a problem. So today I am absolutely thrilled to bring you Tara Ghazi. Tara, I met at the LSI MedTech conference at the Waldorf Astoria in Orange County earlier this year, and I was blown away by your presentation. And I am so thrilled to have you here today, Tara.
Thank you so much, Susan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, Tara is, let me just say a little bit about her. I could go on and on about her resume, but she is a cognitive neuroscientist by training. She has got a PhD from Johns Hopkins University and has had extensive experience both in industry as well as academia. And she's now the co-founder of the startup Malcova, where she's coupling her scientific rigor and reason and leadership skills to really be in service of women's health. And so she's really dedicated to developing some much needed technological advances in breast cancer imaging and diagnostics. So welcome.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Susan, for that kind introduction. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I wanted to say, from neuroscientists, tell us a little bit about how you've made the link from being, in neuroscience to breast imaging.
Absolutely. Well, first I'll just start by saying, of course, identifying as a woman, breast cancer is an issue of concern to all of us. The statistic you shared there that 1 in 8 women, and this is a global statistic, in her lifetime will get breast cancer is just massive. There's probably not one of us who hasn't been touched in our personal network, people connected to us, you personally experiencing breast cancer. So it is just something that really all women should be aware of and at least gain information on. So my own scientific training is in the field of cognitive neuroscience. And during my studies, I had completed my undergraduate education at Berkeley and, as you mentioned, my PhD at Johns Hopkins University. And there, during that time, I spent quite a number of years really deeply studying how humans think about, pay attention to, remember, and interact with information that's visual. We do that all the time, but this was of particular interest to me. And when we look at in breast cancer in particular, the primary means that we use to detect and diagnose breast cancer is information that's based in images. It's visual information. And that understanding kind of makes it not so much of a leap when you think about how critical it is that physicians, which are humans, we ourselves, when we look at these images, it's really important to understand that scientific basis of how that human physician is looking at this information, their cognition related to it, in order to make a really critical decision that can be life-saving. So this was a very natural link for me to move from the academic sphere into this realm of doing something where I get to participate in really contributing, hopefully, for the positive in women's health generally.
Okay, I can see that leap now. And when you're talking about imaging, this brings me on to the next subject, because one of the biggest challenges to imaging is breast density. And could you explain that? I mean, a lot of women have dense breasts. How many people have dense breasts in the world? I mean, is it, I think it's 50%, is that right?
Yeah, so this is thankfully more and more women are becoming aware of this, and not just women, but men. But in the US, between about 40 and 50% of women have dense breasts. In other regions of the world, in East and South Asia, for example, that number is higher, over 60%. In some countries like Japan, that number can reach 80% of women. So having dense breasts is the norm for them. Sometimes this can be presented as if it's something strange, abnormal. But if you don't mind, I'll just take a couple of minutes to really talk about, what does that mean to have dense breasts? If we think about what the breast as an organ is for, its primary, function for us as a mammal is, to ultimately produce milk if we want to breastfeed, and that's how the body functions. And in the breast, you have tissue that grows specifically for that function in order to be able to produce milk. And you have an amount of tissue that are glands and ducts that grow to support milk production. And then you have a lot of connective tissue that supports those and surrounds it. So it's all an ecosystem. And when we're talking about what kind of tissues are in the breast, a lot of times we reduce that simply to just saying we have tissue that's either fat or adipose, we call that in the more medical side of things, or we have tissue that's called fibrous or fibroglandular. And that really encompasses all of the kind of milk producing ecosystem of the breast. And so it's completely normal to have, and functional to have fibroglandular tissue. For some women, the total of their breast tissue, they have more of this fibroglandular tissue than adipose. Some women have more adipose than fibroglandular. And this can change depending on your body composition, depending on your age, depending on, how, if you have had children, how recently, if you've breastfed, all of these things. And really, this is only something that we're concerned about labeling. It's not something you grow up and you're told, okay, breast density, you don't hear that until you really get into the imaging context for breast cancer. Because breast density today tends to typically be defined based on how your breasts appear when they're imaged with mammography. Okay. And I think you might have a slide on that can show some of the people engaged, just what that means. Yeah, maybe one of the next ones. So in mammography, yeah, thank you. When the breasts are imaged, these almost photograph-like images appear, and that adipose or fat tissue shows up as very dark or black looking, and this fibroglandular tissue appears very white in mammography. And it is an issue because cancer can also show up appearing very white. And so when you have a lot of this dense fibroglandular tissue and a lot of this kind of white imaging in your mammogram, it can really hide cancer or other things of concern. And so this is more increasingly an issue that people are being made aware of. So you can see in this example here, clinically, there's 4 different categorizations of how dense your breasts may be. And if you're in the upper 2 of 4, you're described as having dense breasts.
Right. So that notion of early detection is really ends up being a falsehood, because if you have dense breasts, it's going to be very hard to see a small little white dot amongst all of that white imaging, right?
Yeah, you are absolutely right. And that's one of the largest problems in just radiology generally today, is this exact issue, that the tool that is most commonly used for breast cancer detection and diagnosis is really ineffective for up to 50% of women, those who have dense breasts, for the exact reason that you said, because cancer can very easily hide. And that's not the fault of anything but the technology. Right?
Yeah, and I would imagine that also ends up being resulting in a lot of extra imaging from different angles and producing more radiation to try to solve that problem.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. I myself am a woman who has dense breasts, and I've experienced that journey. And because of the scientific background that we briefly discussed, I look at this as an impossible task for the human physician who is presented with images that look like these two on the right and are expected to really do much for you with that. And sometimes the only tool they have, right, is to say, well, I don't know, let me try to send you through that process again, because I really want to find if there's something there, but I'm completely limited by the information that I can collect from the tools that are available to me. So it's a huge problem.
Yeah, I mean, I did want to, that brings us to that subject of what the limitations are. What's out there? What are the technologies that are most commonly used for breast cancer diagnosis? You go in, you have dense breasts, then they image you a few times, and I mean, what else? I mean, it's so disheartening. What are the other options?
Yeah, it is hard to smile about if one has been through that, and we start with mammography, and uh, there are very few women who enjoy the experience of going through a mammogram. For some, it's effective,
Very
right?
few.
Yeah.
Any? Are
Uh,
there any that enjoy it? Oh
I
my
know
God.
it's there have been studies that repeatedly show about 70 to 80% of women experience pain when they go through mammography. That's terrible. You're trying to have a procedure done to help your health, and uh, it's not a pleasant experience, not one you want to go back for. And then when you have dense breasts, it's one that's not very effective, right? So what happens for some women, not all women, is they may be offered access to additional types of technologies. Mammography is just across the board, almost universally the first imaging modality that's going to be offered and made available to women for breast cancer screening. Other technologies may fall in the class of ultrasound. So an ultrasound, instead of using light and producing something like a photograph, they're using sound waves to try and understand different aspects of the tissue. This type of technology, most people encounter that, as maybe the first image they see of, their baby in utero. That's very common in a lovely space, but unfortunately, it has a lot of limitations when it comes to breast cancer imaging. It's not considered very harmful, but the information that it gathers can sometimes be really difficult to interpret. It can be ambiguous because it's not the human vision is not used to interpreting the information that comes from sound in the way that we're used to interpreting things that are in our visual environment all around us. And it can sometimes be a very user-dependent technology, ultrasound, meaning
Okay.
that one technologist, one radiologist might have one opinion, another a completely different opinion based on what
And
happens.
skill set, the ability
Exactly.
to find
Yeah.
things.
So what can happen then is that ambiguity and uncertainty it can lead to can lead to the need for biopsy because the physician is just really unsure, and they want to do everything they can to try and find a cancer if it's there. But unfortunately, there are many unnecessary biopsies performed because of this ambiguity. Up to 80% of the biopsies performed in the U.S. come back negative. So you could say that's a lot of biopsies being performed that might not have had to be.
That
If
are
it was,
unnecessary. And we've already, there's a lot, I've been reading, there's a lot of research coming out that scar tissue provides a great environment for cancer.
yeah, it's disheartening sometimes.
Right.
Yeah, the most effective imaging technology today for dense breast imaging is really contrast enhanced MRI of the breast, not whole body MRI, but a very focal MRI usage of the breast that involves the use of contrast. And that itself is not widely available. It's very expensive. Less than 5% of breast imaging cases in the US involve that technology, tends to be reserved for high risk women. And that contrast that they must use itself comes with risks. So that's the type of imaging that can only be performed under the real guidance and need that a physician describes. So, this is really the landscape that women are presented with, and there's no one great solution. All have their drawbacks and risks, and it's a problem becoming, increasingly known, really, in the U.S.
So I just wanted to show this, you were talking about this earlier, and I just thought it was when we were talking about how you would be lucky if you had cancer in the first image and that's what your breast looked like, but not so much with the second image. This is what you were talking about earlier, right?
Exactly. Yeah, this is an image that's one of the nonprofits that spreads awareness on this information. DenseBreastinfo.org, made this image available. And the woman on the left who has a non-dense breast, it shows you why mammography has been around for so long and successful for a number of women, because about half of women, it's technology that's working for them. And then you see this woman on the right, the other half of women, it's just simply not, right? So it persists because it's serving some, but definitely not all.
Okay, well, what are you and Malcova developing? Because you've co-founded this company to address this issue. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So yeah, as you mentioned, I'm the co-founder of Malcova, and we are a medical imaging technology. We're a startup company that was founded in 2020. And we really were founded because we have an entirely new type of imaging technology that we've been developing and targeting to really solve this need for a single device that's highly effective at dense breast imaging for cancer detection and diagnosis. So our technology is described as narrow beam imaging. It's an entirely new form of imaging that allows for very complete, comprehensive imaging around the breast in incredibly high detail and dimensionality. And that's one of the things that's tricky about dense breast tissue is you need to be able to look at it from many different angles, and you need more than just imaging information about it. And so our technology is able to produce really rich three-dimensional images in high detail, but it's also able to capture information that helps us distinguish between different tissue types and how that tissue might be changing over short amounts of time. So we take all of that really complex information that it could be, and we really simplify it through an entirely new approach to visualization. Trying to, again, really think about there's a physician and a human at the other end of this process. We want to make that as simple as possible for them to get access to the information that helps them say, there's cancer here, and let's move on the diagnostic pathway and get you to treatment. As you've mentioned, detecting breast cancer as early as possible is really critical to have the best treatment and survival outcomes. You really want to catch this when it's tiny at its early stages, because then a woman can go through treatment and live the rest of her life well. It's a very different story if that cancer grows and, unfortunately is allowed to metastasize or spread throughout the body. The chance of survival really decreases drastically. And so we really want to, do what we can to avoid that. And that's what we're working on.
So what you're developing, I mean, how have you developed it so far? Has this been through grants, or who's been supporting you in this?
Yeah, thank you. So my co-founder and I are the co-inventors of our imaging technology, and this has been invented entirely in-house. We're both scientist entrepreneurs by training, different expertise. And we have been very grateful to have incredible governmental non-dilutive funding support. We've had multiple grant awards through the NSF, National Science Foundation, and through the NIH, National Institute of Health. And that's been absolutely critical on our journey because to really solve this problem, it's not enough to just apply a Band-Aid, to have software, the new fanciest, just AI-based software applied to it. You really have to start with a much more effective technology, and that takes time and capital to develop. And that's really what our journey has been about, is developing this and demonstrating it scientifically along the way to make sure that what we are working on is actually going to be meeting the clinical need. And critically, what we're developing is incredibly comfortable for women. So it's not the case that you want to have
Yeah, I've got a
another
picture
device.
here.
Yeah, so this is the product vision that we're working on moving towards right now. Our pathway has been really about getting the engine or the inner workings of the technology up to a very strong state until we're ready to move into studies with actual women. So in our device, the woman just simply lays down on top of the device. There's no compression of her breast. There's no pain in doing this. She's positioning herself comfortably. There's a brief imaging procedure, and then she's done. So it's really a game changer for how breast cancer detection and diagnosis can be performed.
And so you already have one of these machines built?
So right now, this year, that has been the whole of our effort, is getting to this state of putting a beautiful skin and surface on it. So we're in the last stages of development of that device here, which is why we show you more of the model that we're working towards at this. So yeah, it's been a
That's
journey
really
getting here.
exciting. And have you been collaborating with universities? Has this been helping? Have they been helping you
Yeah.
with your academic background and connections?
Yeah, definitely. Along our journey, we've really benefited from some top tier collaborations. Malcova entirely owns this technology, but of course, in developing the science and understanding it, it's a huge benefit. We've collaborated with institutions such as Johns Hopkins University. We are currently collaborating with Stanford, and we are actually moving into an upcoming study with a clinical partner at Yale University. So we're absolutely thrilled about that.
Oh, well, I think that was going to be my next question. Like, what's next for Malcova? So you're moving into a pilot study with Yale University. What
That's
that's going to be a human pilot study. This tell me a little bit about this.
Yeah, absolutely. So, on the pathway of developing a medical device like this, you do a great deal of things in simulation and study with things that aren't people. And so, as soon as we have completed the device this year that we show you, then we're taking the device for our first pilot study in patients that's going to be run at Yale. And that's scheduled to start in the first quarter of the coming year. So, we're thrilled about that. That will really provide the first demonstration in patients of how effective the technology is, and really sets a pathway for us being able to bring this device to the market and to patients on a broader scale.
That is so exciting. Now, and then how closer does that get you to, assuming that it's all working like you say, how is that, how close does that get you to FDA approval? I mean, I'm sure people watching are just like, when can I use it? When can I use it? When can I ditch the mammogram? Like, what is your timeline?
Yeah, so one of the most critical things when you're talking about introducing a device that we want to rely on and depend on, that has such a large health impact, is of course to perform very rigorous study to ensure that it's safe and has sufficient efficacy to do the task that's possible. So after our Yale study, what we would aim for then is going through a much larger scale, clinical trial at a couple of different institutions, and that's really paving the way for regulatory approval. So really, we have a pathway that we hope within a few years, this is something that we'll have available to the population at large.
I am sure you're going to need more money for this. I mean, what are you doing? Are universities and grants continue to support you, or are you needing to take external money?
Yeah, we are at this stage, thankfully, with all of the the grant support that we've had, we've been able to have a very strong and robust demonstration of how effective this technology is. And so that poises us nicely to now work on taking on a partnership with the investment community. And so we are now working on fundraising, bringing on investment partnership to help us really see this technology through.
Oh, okay, that's amazing. So, because I think, that we have some people in the audience. I don't know. I really, really, really would like to get this message out for you and get this funded, because this can, it can be a world changer, Tara. And I'm, 100% behind you on this. Now, this is where people can get in touch with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up. Very happy to have anybody reach out with interest. Of course, happy to connect on LinkedIn, or if you have direct interest and want to follow up with me, email address there is a great way to reach out. And of course, Susan, anybody who wants to reach out through you is always welcome, I'm sure.
Of
Appreciate
course.
the support. Yeah.
Now, let me just give the opportunity. There's quite a few people online. Does anybody have any questions for Tara? You can just put them in the chat or the question mark. This is a particularly well-attended event. Obviously, it strikes a chord with a lot of people. So if anybody has a question, if you could put it in there right now and I can relay it, I will just wait a minute or two for that to see if anybody does have any questions. Is there anything else that you'd like to share in terms of what about, mammograms have ionizing radiation and people don't want to have overexposure to that. I think that's one of the cons is the ionizing radiation, and then it doesn't give a great image. So you end up taking several images, which just multiplies the amount of radiation you're getting. And if I understand, there's quite a lot less radiation with yours, and you hopefully will be one and done as opposed to having multiple images. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right. So we coin the product division of our device, the Breast Monarch. So with the Breast Monarch and imaging, one of our innovations in the technology is that we're able to achieve this very high quality and detailed imaging with safer levels of exposure to patients. And that's really crucial, as you said, to really spare patients undue need. One thing I will say is that physicians are always doing a calculus on what they think is the risk and benefit, right? Of, okay, do we want to expose the patient to something like some degree of ionizing radiation, and what's the benefit we can gain? And you're absolutely right that the problem that not just physicians, contend with, but now increasingly women are aware of, is if I have dense breasts, why do I want to go through a procedure that I know is ineffective for my body and have that exposure when I don't see benefit coming from it? And that is really one of the major points that we, want to make traction on with this. And so why, we're focusing very strongly on developing a device that produces output that's much more effective and safer for patients. Just absolutely critical.
So let me just see I don't see that anybody has asked any questions yet. So if anybody has any questions, if not, then, I'm going to call it a wrap. And I am just so thrilled to have had you on here and so appreciative of what you are doing in the world, Tara. And I'm wishing you every success with it. And someone's popped up with a question here. Let me see. Can you discuss the role of AI in your imaging software and how it enhances diagnostic accuracy?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. We'll try not to take too long with this one, but as I've mentioned a couple of times in this, since my focus is really what the physician is doing with that information that comes out of the device, our use of AI, because we are collecting quite a large amount of data that comes from a few different domains. So we collect spatial data, data about that tissue type, and we can collect information about time. We use AI to really synthesize these things and simplify the presentation for the physician. One thing that physicians contend with is a large volume of data sometimes that they have to go through, and that can lead them to miss critical information just because they're simply human, not in the sense that humans makes mistakes, but in the sense that you're not machines in the way you parse information. So this is a place where AI can be an incredibly useful tool to bring information together and synthesize that in a way that's much simpler for the human physician to be viewing it, so that it's a much more natural viewing experience for them, and that they have the sense of looking at something simple and intuitive. Okay, so this is really our approach to that. Now, in medical
Right. So it's not just a device, it's actually an AI for good play, I suppose. And you're getting different images, and you're going to be able, because you're not kind of retrofitting it onto old mammogram technology. I imagine that it's going to be so much better. I remember seeing an image, and I'm sorry that I didn't put it on here, but I remember seeing an image of some sort of fruit when you presented at the LSI MedTech conference. What was that? Was that?
Yeah, that we love that image. It's a large citrus fruit called a pomelo. That's what people are
Yes.
familiar with. But in that image, we really demonstrate how this kind of pipeline, how having a core technology that's much more effective, and then a much more sophisticated AI-based approach to synthesizing and presenting it ends up with just this very rich, highly detailed, very
Yes.
satisfying.
Like X-ray vision. You had like the one cloudy pomelo
Yeah,
representing the breast, and then the other one where you could it was perfect. You could just see every little detail.
right.
It was amazing. I'm sorry I didn't end up sharing that one, but right. So that's amazing. And I have another person asking where you are located.
Oh, yeah. So our company, we are in the greater San Francisco Bay Area of California. Yeah. We're here in a place where there are many people working on, incredible issues, and there's quite an ecosystem that we have access to.
So let me just put that up one more time for anybody who wants to get in touch. And I'd appreciate anybody, liking and subscribing to the High Performing Woman talk show and sharing this. I mean, I'd like to create a movement with this and get this out there, particularly to people who may be a seed investor or a VC who would be interested in a tech or AI play, or indeed women's health, and really help make this a reality sooner rather than later. So thank you, Tara. And thank you to the audience and everyone who's joined. Wait, let me see it there. I want to see, there might be one more final question. No, there's no more questions. So with that, I wish everyone a great day. And again, please, when this comes out, I'll be posting it as well to YouTube. Please share. Thank
Excellent.
you.
Thank you, Susan. Thanks, everybody.
Sure.